guess what? 3 times as many applied for that than were anticipated. This is according to the news site of one of our local TV stations. According to the Tennesseans, the Tennessee Reconnect program in its first year had 31,000 adults applying. The State Higher Education Commission Executive Director Mike Krause said that expectations were exceeded with a 3x petition for enrollment. The group had thought maybe 8,000 or 10,000 people would apply, but it was 3 times the number. If you give away something, then certainly you're going to have a lot of people asking for it. Things that are free are perhaps worth what you pay for them. And we are in the era where the state is trying to create value around its receding system, its receding state educational system, where you have college degrees, college classes, college attendance, which are heavily subsidized, and which are in the case of this program, given away to older students who want to get an associate's degree. Well, this is David Toulis, and we are at 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM HD4. You report, and the world decides is our slogan. The quality of people who run the country is really very low, and we can see the decline in American history, but also in reference to the decline, the rise, and then the decline of the Roman Empire. There's a writer named Peter Turchin. I've not read his book, but it's quoted repeatedly by Charles Hugh Smith in one of my favorite websites. And in the early part of the Republic, he says that unlike the selfish elites of the later periods, the earlier ones were heavily involved in military enterprises for the empire. When 50,000 Romans died at the Battle of Cannae, that deleted about a third of the members of the Senate. So clearly, the senatorial classes, the elites, were willing to put their blood there on the line for service to the empire. The wealthy classes were also the first to volunteer extra taxes when they were needed. A graduated scale was used in which the senators paid the most, followed by the knights, and then other citizens. In addition, officers and centurions, but not common soldiers, served without pay, saving the state 20% of the legion's payroll. And don't forget that President Trump recently gave his whole year's wage as the head of the federal chief executive to, I think, the restoration of war monuments or war graveyards. In the latter part of the Roman Empire, you had a completely different type of person. An average Roman noble of senatorial classes had property valued in the neighborhood of 20,000 Roman pounds of gold. There was no middle class comparable to the small landholders of the 3rd century BC. The huge majority of the population was made up of landless peasants working land that belonged to the nobles. These peasants had hardly any property at all, but if we estimate it very generously at 1/10 of a pound of gold, the wealth differential would be 200,000. Inequality grew both as a result of the rich getting richer. The late imperial senators were 100 times wealthier than their Republican predecessors, and those of the middling wealth became poor. Earlier on, the senators had only 20x the wealth of the common people, but later it was much more. Well, this is David Toulis, and we are looking, of course, at our own country as one in declension, which is to say decline. And we can see in the use of military force of the kind that John McCain was very proud of, and he talked about the use of force is always the soldiers always ennobled in his rhetoric with their so-called sacrifice. They're perishing in the field of battle as part of a fight for freedom. That is, of course, just a noble concept. It is just a fiction, of course, but one that's very popular. And if you have family members who are military, it's a suggestion you dare not make, that uncle or dad or his generation was in fact not fighting for freedom, whether it was World War II, of course, a very old man now, or Korea or Vietnam. No one was really fighting for freedom. They were fighting for the imperium, that is to say, the federal state. And war, as one noted writer says, one of my favorite writers, in fact, a man who's not a free marketer at all, but a very discerning socialist, Randolph Bourne. War is the health of the state, and so we have this story that we're all freer and better people, and people around the world are better for the wars we've fought, the governments we've toppled, the elections in which we have emmeddled ourselves since the beginning of the Central Intelligence Agency. They're all better for it. Even cities where we've flattened whole blocks with munitions, they're all better off for it, because the bad guys are running away, and the bad guys know who's in charge, and that's us. And we, of course, we're good, and so we are a violent and extraordinary people. No doubt about that. The Americans are an extraordinary people. And this is David Toulis, and you, my listener, are extraordinary too. And I want to mention the quote I was getting from Turchin there is from Charles U. Smith, who has at another one of his posts. I go periodically to of2minds.com to see what he's saying. And one of his very catchy essays is, how wealthy would we be if we stopped borrowing trillions every year? Pointing out that we are really at the edge. I have parties to whom I have personal connection, and whom I'm suggesting that they get out of equities now while they can. I'm holding up here for my viewer on Facebook one of the graphics at of2minds.com. We're all live on the Great Censor FB. Nugget Radio is the keyword. Type in Nugget Radio 92.7 FM. Also live on YouTube. And the graphic shows almost vertical lines going up. There are two here on one page of my printout. The rise of financialization, where it's almost a straight gain with a total debt of $70 trillion and the gross domestic product at $20 trillion. And the one below it is showing the rise of credit, and it's not, of course, a straight up line, but it shows it. He highlights with a little arrow that there's a very sharp hill, okay, and then there's a little dip in the hill, and it keeps going up. Well, that little dip was the collapse of 2008, which we thought was going to crash the economy, right? So there is a cataclysm, I would say, of untold proportions, and who knows what small butterfly wing current would set things in motion for a sudden recognition, a flash of discernment in the mass mind, right, and in the mind of those few individuals who run CalPERS and sovereign wealth funds, like that's the one from California retirement system. Sovereign wealth funds. In Tennessee, we have a sovereign wealth fund called TACRS, TCRS, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. A sovereign wealth fund dressed up as a retirement scheme with some officials named on the board. This is David Toulis. Every Thursday, we have our gang at Starbucks 10 North for the Gridiron Gang Show. You can come and hang out with us there from 7 to 9 p.m., broadcasting the Gridiron Gang Show straight from Starbucks. And it's all about high school sports. That's the main specialty. There are also specialties behind the counter, drinks, special drinks, coffees. And if you're hungry, you can, of course, eat there as well. Extended hours all season long, open till 10 p.m. So come on out and support your team with a portion of the proceeds going to local schools, scholarship programs, and after-school programs as well. Every Thursday night, all season long, Starbucks at 10 North on the North Shore. And we are glad you're giving us just a few minutes of your time. Now, the question I wanted to get into just quickly, I'm mentioning Jim Hammond and asking about about executive government. We live in a police state. Okay, and yes, the market does exist. There is a free market. There always is a free market, even at the acme, the highest point of the Soviet Union, or even the Red Chinese government in Beijing, even at the highest point of greatest consolidation, even in the Third Reich, right in 1942, when things were going well for the Reich and Adolf Hitler and his stormtroopers. There, even in that situation, there is a free market. It does always exist because wherever people are, there are always exchanges taking place, and they're in relative freedom. But the question is, should freedom be generalized, and should prosperity be generalized, or should it be confined to a few? Should liberty be used widely and greatly and strongly by the mighty ones, or should everybody, the commonest person, right, the man who works in a restaurant, the man who drives a truck as an operator, or the small businessman, should we all have liberty and freedom, which is to say the absence of external control upon our movement and our actions? And my argument is here on the David Tula Show is that yes, it should be, but we don't live in an era where that's really true. We have a cartelized economy, and state actors are involved in a kind of extortion racket. And also, big companies are effectively running their part of the economy extortionately. And here we're talking about medical services through third-party payment systems, insurance companies. Insurance companies seem to be behind a lot of grief in our day. We have effectively private socialized medicine at every point, with a couple of exceptions. And that would be, for example, Curtis Kane, who ran his dispensary, his medical practice in Jackson, Mississippi. And you can read about him at Nuganomics.com, our chief sponsor. He's 96 years old. And when he was on the air, we chatted not long ago about the whole question of perquisites. A perquisite, or perk, is something that's forbidden in our law, and yet that law is widely ignored. And it's widely ignored by our sovereign wealth fund. As I was telling Marie Mott, our star at 11 o'clock on Tuesday. You can hear Marie on Tuesday at 11. We live in an era of perks. And one perk, for example, is if you work in government at any point in Tennessee, even if you work for a nonprofit government-connected quasi-governmental entity like a utility, even people like that, I believe, if I remember reading the eligible roster, can be part of Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. So you can have you pay part of your wages into the plan. I think it's 5% as a deduction, but then you get to roll in the money afterwards. But that's just kind of the window dressing. The real gain is that this fund, I think, if I'm remembering what I sent to Marie, it's worth about $49 billion. It's again, sovereign wealth. It's just pure wealth, tax-free, run by government people in Nashville, with a kind of gloss, a kind of gold plating, if you will, of making it look respectable, as if this is, in fact, a government organization. And it is. Governments own much of the economy. The federal government and state governments own just unbelievable large swaths of the economy. It's been a while since I've written about that. But and I've interviewed several times the man who first sort of uncovered this government economy, and you can read more about that at Nuganomics.com, our sponsor. We are people who believe that you report and the world decides. But getting back to the question about executive government, these are all perquisites, right? TACRS, TCRS is the perquisite. There are many other perquisites. The license to kill, that's one as well, that police departments and sheriff's deputies allow themselves. They allow themselves to kill people in ways that you could not. And we have cases. There's been a rare murder conviction in Texas of an officer who shot a rifle into a car full of young people and killed one of them. That was considered murder. But things like that happen all the time. I'm thinking of the Brailsford killing of the man who worked for the pesticide company in a hotel in Mesa, Arizona. Clearly a murder, but the jury found that he acted under necessity. The whole idea of executive power is that it's not accountable to anybody. It is immune. And immunity attaches itself to state actors in a way that could never you could never claim that it attaches itself to you. You don't have that power. You're held to account for all your wrongs, but they are not. And where does that come from? And how is that government to be understood conceptually? Well, the main concept that I want you to think about is this here on the David Tula Show, that our origins are biblical. Our origins in many ways are Christian, though at the time of the founding of the country, there was already the rationalist revolt against Christianity, and God had been excluded almost entirely from the idea of government. And because God's concern, as you may have heard around here, God's concern is only with the individual and the individual's salvation. He cares nothing about the shape of government, the shape of courts, whether there should be police, whether there should be a central bank, whether we should have a federal weather bureau, right? The National Organization of Aeronautics and Space Administration. We should have that. These things are all, in principle, I would say, excluded from the role of the magistrate, the wielder of the sword, right? The party that carries the sword for justice has no business running a space agency or a food stamp agency or a geologic survey. He has no authority to do any of those things. Those are things left to the private sector. But we have all these myriad alphabet letter soup agencies because we believe in executive government. We believe in government that gets things done, right? We believe in government that can accomplish its will. In the biblical conception, government does not have an independent will. It is reactive only. And that's where the sheriff comes from. That's why we may have some criticism of Jim Hammond. Definitely on his traffic enforcement policy, which is outside the law, we have a definite issue with the mayor, but with the sheriff. But on the whole, though, he represents the biblical land-based common law concept of government. It is passive. The sheriff operates to preserve the court. He is a part of the judicial function. In the biblical argument for limited and rational and just government is judicial only. There is no executive branch. There is no legislative branch. Well, why not? 800-8949, 800-8949. And I knew Mike was when I asked that question, I knew that Mike was going to call me. And well, it's somebody else. This is David Toulis, and caller, what's on your mind? What's on your mind? Well, the argument that we are making is that the government should be judicial. It should react to things. It should not have its own will. It should not have its own desire, its own independence. It should not be independent at all. It should be reactive and respond to what? Well, to crime and to disputes. And to foreign aggression, to aggression from afar, outside the borders of the country, or aggression from within, outside the law, where property rights are being rejected, or the right to life is being rejected. There, the government acts, right? So government responds when there is a crime or a dispute over, let's say, a contract or property line. These are where the government responds, because someone says, "Hey, can you come and settle this fight?" Or, "Hey, this man killed my brother. Can you judge, or can you serve as judge over our finding of the perpetrator?" Right? The accused is here. We want you to try. We want you to arrange for the trial of that person. And that's all. That there is a jury trial concept in biblical justice. Now, what we have though with police, what we have with the officer Brian Cattell shooting a man committing suicide, these armed members, they are an occupational army. There's no doubt about that. That is how they've been trained. They're trained in a military style. They're vertically integrated, highly defensive. Their fingers are always trigger aware. A reform of policing would take off their military uniforms. That would be when we have a mayor who finally understands the limited role of the government and respect the people. The police department will have business suits or Sunday best. That's probably what they would be wearing. Some would be armed, perhaps, but the reform would take some time. There would be waves of reform, de-escalation, demilitarization. And, maybe that's an insane idea. Is that a silly idea? Why don't you call me, 800-8949, 800-8949, that cops would be disarmed and they would just be wearing business suits, and their cars would look less and less like invasion machines. They would look more like regular cars, but they would be clearly marked. You would not have unmarked cars in the future de-escalation, the de-executivization of city government. David Tillis, we've got a lot to get to today, and I do thank you for joining me. 800-894-9800. Is the number. Put that in your phone and call if there's something with which I could help you. His name is David Tillis, Nuga Radio. Sean Hannity is not far off, not far indeed, just 30 minutes out. Hang on.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A Kentucky driver sentenced to more than 5 decades in prison for a crash that killed 6 is seeking a new trial. The Chattanooga Times Free Press reports 42-year-old Benjamin Brewer's attorneys are seeking a new trial, with defense attorneys arguing the state of Tennessee concealed crucial evidence. Brewer's attorneys want information on a chemical the TBI added to his blood sample, asserting they'd never heard of the contamination until witness testimonies. And we've all experienced the traffic congestion associated with the Hamilton Mall area. The city is seeking proposals from engineering firms for services related to modifying Hamilton Place Boulevard near the mall to accommodate the state's I-75 interchange work. Spokeswoman Stacy Keating with CBL Properties says if the project receives construction funding, as is now tentatively scheduled, it could be complete sometime in 2025 or 2026. Val St. John for Nuga Radio, News Talk 92.7, Action News Now.
Your home is a constant work in progress. Repaint the walls? Yeah, easy enough. Leaky faucet? There's a video for that. But roof repair? You might want some help. That's where Chattanooga Roofing Contractors come in. They have 3 generations of roofing excellence you can count on. Leave the ladder in the garage. Go to chatroofing.com. That's chatroofing.com for Chattanooga Roofing Contractors, a roofing company you can trust.
The kids are back in school, routine has returned, and we've shifted our thoughts to the fast approaching holiday season. Are you hosting? Want to spruce up before your guests arrive? Whether you want new color and exciting wallpaper or elegant window treatments, the designers at Chattanooga Paint and Decorating can help. With brands like York, Tebow, Graber, and Carroll, we know you'll find something you love. Stop by Chattanooga Paint and Decorating today. It's really more than just a paint store. On Hicks and Pike, across from Valvoline, or online at ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Wow, Triumph Spitfire. I haven't seen one of those in ages. Boy, is it gorgeous.
Thanks. It was my grandfather's. Drives like a dream.
Where do you go to keep it up?
Rivermont Pure. I never thought I'd find a place, but they specialize in older and European cars. They get the hard-to-find parts and treat me right every time.
Rivermont Pure?
Yeah, they're on Hicks and Pike across from Lupton Drive. I found them online at rivermontpureservice.com.
Rivermont Pure, import or domestic. If it rolls, they work it. Man, you sure you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I worked with my dad on his truck all the time. Just one more bolt to go.
Yeah, wrong bolt. Today's truck ain't your daddy's truck. For repairs on today's vehicles, you need AMCO Transmission and Total Car Care of Chattanooga on Lee Highway. Stay on the road, not in the garage. AMCO Transmission on Lee Highway. Get it done the right way. The Thompson Pet way. Yeah, I just put that in here.
Join We've Got You Covered with Scott Schrader every Saturday from 10 to 11 on Nuga Radio. From finance to fixtures, we discuss everything you need to know about buying or owning a home, the pitfalls, the perks, and everything in between. Saturday mornings, 10 to 11, right here on Nuga Radio.
I got my business up and running, and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Areas of patchy dense fog will start out your Friday. Very warm and humid for the afternoon. Highs upper 80s with a few isolated showers and storms. Tonight, 80 showers and storms diminishing, lows near 70. For the holiday weekend, only isolated afternoon showers and storms heating up, highs of around 90 by Labor Day. Looking to buy or sell a home? Real Living Southern Realty provides real answers and customized marketing solutions. Serving the entire tri-state area, check rosouthernrealty.com for more. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Toulis.
This is David Toulis. Near is better than far, small than big, simple than complex. And in the footnotes, at 5-point type, small type, need reading glasses probably to get through it. Personal is better than corporate, and physical than abstract. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. I'm planning on going to the recorder's office today to do something I just had not thought to do before, and that is to record transportation administrative notice as a public record. Now, I've given it to a multitude of authorities, starting from the governor, David Perky, his chief of safety commissioner. He got a copy. The governor got a registered copy. I think it put me back $12, and Perky got just a certified copy. Then on up to more important offices such as the sheriff. Sheriff Jim Hammond got on the 1st of March a personal copy and an interview that did not go very well because I was asking him about his transportation procedures, arrest procedures, and he couldn't tell me anything about them. But he did get the notice, and that was following the 20th of February, where I gave Chattanooga notice of transportation administrative notice, which is to say the limits on the statute. Today, I'll be going to the register of Pam Hurst's office and registering my 20-page analysis, which is called transportation administrative notice with that body. And now it can be used as a reference in court cases. And there is a prospect of having it referred to in a proposal that a young woman is going to be making to a judge in city court, a proposal that would let her travel if she can't do it under a license, which she can't afford to get, she's too poor, then she can travel as a matter of right under an agreed order under the authority of the statute as described by notice. Well, this is David Toulis, and caller, what is on your mind? Thanks for ringing me.
This is Constance. Constance
Giles. Yes. How are you getting on in your defense of your case? You have a case you're trying to build against the county and the sheriff, Scott Chitwood, but you also are having to deal with another matter, and that is the accusation filed by Lieutenant Lowry in Scott Chitwood's sheriff's department, who accuses you of blocking a government function, right? What is the charge, Constance?
Willful obstruction.
Just a wonderful concept. What is it that you are willfully obstructing in that
well,
claim?
I'm assuming that I'm willfully obstructing my right to not speak to somebody. That's the only thing that I can come to conclusion with.
Right, because go ahead.
I didn't obstruct nothing.
Well, you're a mother of 6 daughters, and you were the evening of this delightful evening of you might say of police aggression. You were in your house, and you had called 911 because there were 2 men in your house who were strangers, and they were in your basement, and where you're on the garage level of your family home. Your husband Roy, who runs Rooter Pros plumbing business, was upstairs in the shower. And suddenly men appear, and you call 911, and these men are not refusing. They're refusing to leave. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, both men refused to get out of my garage. At one particular time, one of the men eventually stepped out, and then the other man just thought it was funny and stayed in the garage. And he eventually ended up leaving, but not before kicking over a fan/heater that was in between the 2 doors, cutting my 8-year-old on her toe, and then ended up leaving. And when he seen that I was on the phone with 911, he proceeded to call, and they just basically excluded me calling and took his word for truth.
Well, now I heard you've left me a disc, Constance, of these calls, and I listened to the first one and about half of the second one. That was his call. And he says this repo man says that you threatened to shoot him dead.
I did, absolutely. You're in my house. I have a front door and a doorbell.
And this, of course, is after dark, right? In the evening hours.
And I don't have, I didn't have a gun in my hand, but me logically thinking in the heat of the moment, okay, well, maybe if I tell these people I'm going to shoot them, maybe they'll get out and scat, but they weren't having it.
Well, the man is, we can hear your voice on his phone in the background. You are speaking very rapidly like a very angry hen.
Yes, I was very angry.
and your call runs about 7 minutes. I'm not sure, at least four or 5 minutes. And the dispatcher is telling him, well, go to the safety of your car and lock the door, somehow, as if the repo man needs to protect himself against you, the mother.
Right.
What kind of children were with you there in the basement?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
You said you have were all of your daughters there, Constance?
Yes, there are all 7 of them. I have 6 of mine that I've gave birth to, and then my niece that I'm adopting.
Now, when the deputy did arrive, what happened? Just my listener has not heard this story, so just quickly remind us where it is you are under the accusation, but also you are an aggrieved party. What happened that after the deputy and her colleague arrived?
Well, when Deputy Lowry and Lieutenant Lowry and Deputy Fletcher arrived, it took them a few moments to come down to my garage where my family and I sat. And when she got down there, my son-in-law Logan had said hi, and her response was, "What's the problem?" And I stopped for a second. I didn't say anything at that time, and my son-in-law said, "What?" Like, to repeat herself. So she did. She said, "What's the problem?" And I stood up and I said, "Okay, I'm the homeowner. I called 911. This is not acceptable. Respect goes both ways. I'm not going to talk to you." So I closed the right side of the garage door, proceeded to try to close the left side, and I have the security barriers at the bottom of my garage for safety reasons, and it would not close. Deputy Fletcher and Lieutenant Lowry proceeded to come into my home and tell me, yelling at me, saying that I'm going to talk to them, and come on, lady, and grabs my arm and throws me outside on the concrete.
You are injured in this assault?
Yes, sir, I was.
How so?
I had a busted knee, a busted elbow. I've got a lot of burning and tingling sensation in my left shoulder going down into my fingers. I had a bruise as if when she used her heavy body weight to get on top of me and put her knee in my back. Somehow, I'm assuming her foot kicked my leg, causing it to have a bruise there on the right leg, on my outer part of my thigh. And just a lot of stress, throughout this process. And
the obstruction statute in Georgia says that the deputy or the official has to be involved in a lawful activity. Now, where was the activity lawful when you were thrown down, and where was it unlawful? In other words, where did she lose her ability to charge you? She's charged. You understand the question? She's charging you that under obstruction, which requires that the deputy, the person who's doing the policing, has to be doing something lawful, right? And so if you resist, you are resisting because you're saying that the activity of the officer is unlawful. My question is,
go ahead.
Was she at some point not acting in a lawful fashion? Is my question.
Absolutely. From the time that she approached my family and I, she was not being lawful.
Okay, so that what you're saying that should prevent her charge from sticking against you.
Exactly. I mean, I have a right, and it's called the constitutional right, to not speak to somebody if I choose not to, and I feel threatened by. I don't. Just because you have a badge on doesn't mean that you're overpowering me.
You live in Cohutta in Whitfield County, and you've been very aggressive about making demands in discovery. That is to say, finding out all that's against you on the other side, so that you can evaluate the charges and decide how to plead. Have you entered a plea yet? Has that first hearing come up?
It has not, and there's still not a court date as of today. There is still no discovery. GBI is involved. The CID is doing an internal investigation, so they say. There's still nothing. I call every day asking for a court date, and they do not have one, and they do not have any evidence except Lowry's little report on the police.
And that police and her narrative, which runs under a full page and then half of a second, has very little in her writing to indicate the cause of her arresting you. In other words, the crime that you committed of obstruction. It doesn't really seem to emerge in her published narrative.
Correct. It doesn't explain anything to the fact of what I obstructed. What did I do to deserve to be charged for this, with this crime? So, I mean, my theory of this is going to be thrown out. As I've said from day one, I was falsely arrested and accused of something that I did not do. Just because you're an officer and you've got 18 years of criminal justice does not make you above the law and know the law. As, you know, everybody's pretty much heard Clay Pangle stating that they can come into your house and do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it.
Just briefly, who's Clay Pangle? Say who that is.
Pangle.
Well, you're saying who is this man and what is it he said again, please? Constance Giles?
Clay Pangle is a captain up there at Whitfield County Sheriff's Department. And he was recorded arguing with me about the law, saying that they can go into one's home at any given time and do whatever they want to do. And they do not have to have legal documentation, which I beg to differ with that.
Well, the legal documentation in the law in Georgia and all across the country is that the officer has to have a warrant. Officers they simply cannot come into your house on their own will.
So my theory with all of this, these people, including the sheriff, you know, they've got a lot of lack of training, and I blame the sheriff for this. You know, from my understanding, he's been in the seat since 1980s, and I just think he may, you know, I don't know. Does he have dementia? Does he not understand the concepts of the law and the constitutional law? I think it's time for him to step down or be made to step down. This is not acceptable, and I am not going to stop fighting. And I will put him under the fire. I mean, he's going to be shown.
Well, I think what your interest in defending yourself is really estimable. Constance Giles, you're a mother of 6 children. You're a businesswoman. You run with your husband. Again, give me the name of the company.
It's Rooter Pros.
Rooter Pros. That's right. Rooter Pros LLC with a heroic care for customers. I was making note yesterday that Roy, after a very long day, went up on a mountain and got there at 11:30 or so. Someone had called with a broken pipe in almost midnight.
Yes, sir.
Well, you don't find professionals like that. They'll say, "Well, could we come by early in the morning?" That's what most people do.
Yeah, this customer had called 5 different plumbing companies and had no success. They said that they would show up, and they never did. So late at night, if all else fails, they call us, and we came to the rescue and got them fixed.
They call Roy Giles. Well, one thing I think that might concern my listener, Constance, is that you've had a very difficult time finding counsel. That is to say, someone who's a practicing attorney to either advise you or to represent you, either in the criminal case or well. I think the problem you're having is finding someone to represent your claims in a proposed civil case. Is that right? Why? What's going on there?
I'm not sure. The only thing that I have come to conclusion with is that there are so many police brutality that these lawyers are just swamped and overloaded with caseloads. And so I'm not giving up hope. I have spoke with one, and I have reached out to the Georgia Bar association, and within 5 minutes of me completing the application with great detail of what took place, an attorney called me, and I missed his call because I was on the phone with a customer. But I'm going to reach back out to them and, go from there. But there's somebody, and I'm not going to go with just the first person just because somebody says, oh, well, we don't have time or we can't do this. There's somebody out there that will hear this and want to take on this case.
Or lawyers reluctant to take part because police abuse cases are hard to prosecute and hard to win because there is in the law is stacked against my Georgia listener who lives in your state and who has to deal with officers who have effective immunity, and it's hard to get verdicts against the officer personally or against his employer. They are kind of a privileged class. They're kind of above everybody else. They are a legal elite. And so lawyers are wary of trying these cases because they're very time consuming, and the certainty of a verdict in favor of the plaintiff is elusive.
Yes, I reached out to a few attorneys in Dalton, Georgia, and it is just a really sad shame that these lawyers, went to school for X amount of years and practice law and know right from wrong, but yet will not stand up for what is right and go against the people that are wronged others. And it's really sad.
Well, what I was mentioning before, you've been very aggressive about discovery, and that is to say, getting all the information that the other side has. And tell my listener why that's important, and just briefly tell me what you've done to get this information. Like you've given me quite a bit. What have you given people like me, and why is it so important, Constance?
I have given you a copy of the police report. I have given you copies of the DVD of the incident of July 15th, showing that, I have nothing to hide, nothing to lie about of what took place. The recordings of the captain, the recordings of the sheriff, saying that he finds it hard to believe that any of his officers would have done such a thing. Instead of saying, oh, these are strong allegations, can we sit down and have a talk and get through this? That was never offered. He's not worried about it. He doesn't care. I have gone to the sheriff's department multiple times requesting discovery. I've gone to the DA's office multiple times requesting discovery for my due process rights, so I can go before a judge if and when they feel froggy enough to jump with a court date.
Well, let me ask you, Constance, what do you mean by your due process rights? What is it you're fighting for? Why should my listener consider his own case or her own case in this sense? What are due process rights?
You don't want to go before a judge not understanding all of the evidence that these people supposedly have against you. You want to be able to have enough time to review all of their evidence, police report, witness statements, a body camera, audio, video, anything and everything that they have against you. You are entitled to that. So you can go before the judge and in good faith plead guilty or not guilty. You can't go before a judge in your first hearing and make a plead not knowing what you're up against. Even though I feel I know what I'm up against, I'm still making it hard for them and demanding what I feel is rightfully mine.
And you set a deadline too, did you not?
Yes, definitely. And, I've had no successful luck out of any of this because they don't have anything. There's no court date. GBI is still investigating. I've got it's been a week as of Wednesday that the GBI should have completed, that did complete our investigation and interview. And then Thursday of last week, he was going to meet with Lowry and get hers. And then Friday of last week, he was meeting with the two repo guys. So he said to give him at least 3, possibly 4 weeks, and he will have his big stack of investigation completed.
And let's make it real clear.
3-case report.
Let's make it real clear. We're talking with Constance Giles, and the GBI report, the GBI investigation of this case is not against you. It's against the department, Sheriff Scott Chitwood and his Lieutenant Lowry and maybe others.
Yep.
And so there seems to be maybe a pattern here. and you are speaking up about being a victim of what seems to be a pattern. And so if you, my listener, are in Whitfield County and you have a story like Constance's where there's been abuse against you, or you know someone who has a story like that, please make contact with Constance at Rooter Pros. That's the family business, and she's often on the phone there, ready to answer the phone for you. So if you have a story like that, and I think people in Whitfield County and everywhere else need to get together and commiserate and pool resources and get the story straight. The story is bigger than just your case, Constance, right?
Yes, there is multiple people, and it's sad that a lot of people are just so terrified of this crime and not understanding their rights to stand up for themselves.
Constance, thanks so much for joining us. We're talking with Constance Johnson. This is David Toulis. Make sure that you take part in our Trail of Tears Memorial Pre-Ride Rally at Crockett Power Sports. That's going to be September 14th. This is David Toulis, and there'll be an event there. Our station will be at Crockett Power Sports from 4 to 7 p.m. David Toulis.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
The Kentucky driver sentenced to more than 5 decades in prison for a crash that killed 6 is seeking a new trial. The Chattanooga Times Free Press reports 42-year-old Benjamin Brewer's attorneys are seeking a new trial, with defense attorneys arguing the state of Tennessee concealed crucial evidence. Brewer's attorneys want information on a chemical the TBI added to his blood sample, asserting they'd never heard of the